Hello everyone and welcome to episode 1 of the Bump and Run for 2020, as this year we will cover everything NASCAR related, and today our topics are talking about Daytona 500 pole qualifying as well as the Daytona Busch Clash. Or Crash. Either way, let's get started. Alright, I'm going to quickly talk about Daytona 500 qualifying because really in my opinion there's not too much to talk about, especially since most of the field is going to be put in their starting lineups after the duels this Thursday. Again, this was, Daytona 500 pole qualifying, so it was just a qualifying event to see who would sit on the pole for the Daytona 500, as well as who would sit second in this case. I don't know why they say pole qualifying. Maybe it should be changed to front row qualifying. Either way, it doesn't matter. But let's talk about our pole sitter, Ricky Stenhouse Jr. I think for a lot of us, that was a really huge surprise. Like the past, I think the stat was the past 5 Daytona 500s, the past 5 years, have all the poles have gone to a Hendrick Motorsports car, which is pretty incredible. Just shows that Hendrick Motorsports is just kept up with their super speedway program, which it seems like they only do really good for Daytona 500 pole qualifying. It's usually maybe the Ford teams or the Toyota teams that do really good at super speedways. And it was only this past year when Chase Elliott won Talladega in 2019, I think it was the spring 2019 race, that you could really see some performance from the Hendrick camp at super speedways. But no matter what, for the 500 weekend, they were always sitting on pole. And this year, qualifying took place, and the focus was on the Hendrick guys. As you do, as stats have shown, you could bet a lot of money on a Hendrick guy or the Hendrick organization, one of their cars being on the pole or both cars being on the front row. And we didn't see that. We saw the second half of that. We saw a Hendrick Motorsports car on the front row, but not on the pole. And Ricky Stenhouse Jr. Was the pole sitter, or got the pole for the Daytona 500. And I can just recall, just from memory, watching the broadcast, and I was surprised on the lack of cars that were actually able to keep up with Stenhouse. The biggest thing here is setting the cars up. And we all saw this back in 2018 with the Stewart-Haas guys when they skewed their cars, the rear ends to the left to get the spoiler out from the air. It's the same thing at every super speedway. It doesn't matter what package it is. These guys are trying to set up the car so the rear spoiler is out of the wind, or as much out of the wind and wind air, whatever, as they can. And I also have to believe that Stenhouse maybe had a very, very skewed car and very lowered car in the rear. Especially in the broadcast, they brought up a lot about how Stenhouse's car was sparking the ground significantly more than what other drivers in the field cars were also doing as well. So yeah, I give it to Stenhouse in that 47 team, especially since he left Roush last year, and I think a lot of people didn't see too much hope in Stenhouse. A lot of us joke that Stenhouse crashing cars, and whatnot, or he's had good success at super speedways, but then lately people have been hitting him hard with wrecking cars and things like that. So yeah, I definitely think this is some good mojo for Stenhouse, if you want to say that. How will he fare at Daytona? Again, with the difference in speeds, it definitely seems like, especially the Hendrick guys at least Bowman, Elliott, and Johnson. Who's the other guy we're missing? Byron. Yeah, Byron wasn't even close. But it seems like those guys, maybe Denny Hamlin, they set their cars up to go as fast as possible. The rest of the field seems to have set their cars up for handling. And so let's move on and talking about the duels. And this is the problem with setting your car up for speed, is that you have to survive the duel so you can finish the race and get into your starting position for the 500. Obviously need to, try to survive the 500 to make it to the end. But yeah, will you risk handling over speed? Okay, so yeah, Stenhouse will be starting first in Duel 1, and Alex Bowman starting first in Duel 2. I don't know why I can't say Duel tonight. So with that being said, they're going to be struggling during the duels. Obviously, they're going to be starting in their respective positions. So I don't know how racy they're going to get in the duels. They might just jump to the back, ride around, try not to risk it so they don't have to go to a backup car if they do get in a crash. Because it's Daytona Super Speedway Racing, it's going to happen, but I don't know, it's a concern. Obviously, like I said, the only team that really showed true strength in setting your cars up for speed at super speedways was Stewart-Haas Racing back in 2018, but that was also a completely different aero package. And especially with the racing we've seen in this new package, when they used it at both Talladega races in 2019 as well as the Daytona race in July, we'll see how it plays out. I don't know. We'll wait and see. But Stenhouse is your pole sitter. Let me know in the comments what you guys think about that. If you think he'll survive for the 500, I really don't know. I don't know what else to really say about it other than, that team just performed out of nowhere. Wasn't expecting that at all. All right. It's the Busch Clash or Crash, whatever you want to call it. It was quite a race. It was quite an exhibition race. And it's hard not to talk about it without feeling uneasy about it. But I will say this, and I saw a lot of people talking about it. Dave Moody on Twitter made this comment as well, and I have to agree with him on that. It's just an exhibition race. There were a lot of people complaining about this race, and I'll get into that here in a bit. But the complaints were just insane for a fun exhibition race. And I don't understand why the NASCAR community was so outraged over so many things. But let's get into it. Let's talk about it, and let's come up with a conclusion at the end. Throughout the year, you guys are going to hear me talk a lot about what defines good racing and what doesn't define good racing. And I'm going to say straight out, I am not a fan of NASCAR or the community wanting to create a package or create a car that promotes closer racing. And not just closer racing for maybe a quarter of the race, but for the entire full 100% race length. People want to see side-by-side, not even side-by-side, people want to see three-wide pack racing for the entirety of a race length, just to make it exciting. And I'm personally not one of those people that like that idea. And some of the reasons are what I'm going to talk about in the Clash today. But that's a little bit later. Let's first talk about the first, 65 laps. I mean, nothing wreck-wise happened. Let's put it that way. But a lot did happen within the first half of the race. So if we look at the start of the race, the first thing that happened was, I thought it was going to be a fun, enjoyable race to watch if you're one of those people that want to see a lot of side-by-side action. And I thought it was going to be like that. I thought drivers were just going to let loose, do whatever they want. Who cares if your teammates out there or you're trying to work with manufacturers? You're just going to go and have a good time. It's an exhibition race. And immediately after the first 3 laps or 4 laps, something like that, the high lane just gets all of this momentum. People start migrating to the high lane, and you're left with Aric Almirola and Ryan Newman on the bottom. And I think Ryan Newman was able to slide in the line. Almirola went all the way to the back, and it was Martin Truex Jr. who led this train on the high side. And I was really surprised how quickly they went up there. But then I looked at the lap counter and realized this was a 75 lap race. So I was like, all right, that makes a little bit more sense. I mean, it's super speedway racing. You usually don't risk it early on. You try to just ride in line, get a feel for the car, get a feel for the guys around you, and just try to survive to the end. That's what super speedway racing is. That is what super speedway races have defined themselves to be, if that makes any sense. People expect it to be just chaos from lap 1 all the way to the end. But if you want to survive and make it to the end, you have to do that. You just have to kind of ride in line. Same goes for any race out there. You don't risk it until closer to the end of the race, when you know there's a little bit more on the line. At the start, you're just trying to get through it. You're just trying to pace yourself and get a feel for things. You're not going to make aggressive moves on lap 3 because you know your car might do some unexpected things where you need to go back into the pits later and make adjustments on, just to, get more comfort into your car. So other than that, I think that was expected, and I didn't mind it. I didn't mind it at all. Again, it was just kind of the start of the race. As it went on, you started seeing the groups break up. You started to see, this is where things get a little bit lost for me, but I believe the Fords and the Toyotas up front, they started to pull away from the Chevys. The Chevys tried to make a line on the bottom, including the one Ford by Almirola, I think, in the very back. But that group, I think, was led by Byron or something like that, and they were on the bottom. So between lap 1 and lap 26, which is when the caution was thrown for whatever reason, whatever that competition caution was, you had those two lines. Again, the Toyotas and Fords on the top, and then most of the Chevys on the bottom. So yeah, again, pardon me if I get things confused, because it's been a while since I've watched the race. Obviously, I'm recording this on Monday. I should have recorded it the night of the race, but I was busy with homework and such, so this was the perfect time for me to do it. So again, pardon me if I mistaken anything in this episode. So yeah, so coming to pit road, the guys in the broadcast booth thought that the Chevys would try to pit before the competition caution was waived, and in turn, it was the opposite. It was the Fords and the Toyotas that decided to come in and make that pit stop, and then caution was waived after that, and then the Chevys came in to pit. Now, there was a lot of math going on in terms of making it to the end of the race, and then this is where the race personally got exciting for me. So yeah, they went green after that, and at this point it was the Fords and the Toyotas that were not going to make it on fuel. And the Chevys, they had to save a good number of laps. They didn't need to save too much, but I think the guys in the booth did the math, and the Fords and the Toyotas were 4 laps of gas, or there's a 4 lap of gas difference than the Chevys that pitted under caution. So the race went on, it went green, and early on in this final stint of the race, the Fords and the Toyotas decided to pit. And I wasn't too surprised that they made the move. I was surprised at the moment that they made it, but in the end it made a little bit more sense on why they pitted. First off, because they were the first to pit before the caution came out, and then all the Chevys had to pit. All the Fords and Toyotas were up front, which means the Chevys behind them were basically using the draft off of the Fords and Toyotas to save gas. So they came in at perfect timing. They didn't come in too early or too late. They came just at the right time to make their stop, so they knew that their tank of gas can make it to the end. But it made the Chevy guys super on the fence on whether or not they can make it, because now the lead guys in that Chevy group had to full throttle it to keep speed. And sure enough, these guys were saving. Actually, I think Joey Logano was caught up in that. Yeah, Joey Logano was caught up in that as well. He was the lead, or he wound up being the lead guy in that Chevy pack. And they were barely full throttle. I mean, some of those lead guys in that Chevy pack were full throttle, but a few of them were not. And the Fords and the Toyotas that pitted, oh man, they were catching those Chevys like it was nothing. And that's where the race personally got exciting for me. I love strategy moments in a race. Anytime strategy can be used to make a good story out of a race, it's my favorite. And that was probably the coolest moment of the race. And just seeing all the Fords, you just knew that, the telemetry showed they were going so much faster. And that closing rate speed that they had once the Ford pack caught up was insane. And so we had a race at that point there. It was a race of strategy, and like I said, I personally love those races. I wish more races were like that, but then we have implementations of stages, which kind of ruins things. But that was definitely my favorite moment of the race. And I believe what kind of, bottled that group up together was when the lead car in that pack, Joey Logano, put a block on the incoming cars. Actually, it was like a combination of him and I think Jimmy Johnson did it as well. They didn't show it well on the broadcast booth because I think they switched to like Jimmy Johnson's like bumper camera and whatnot, and there was like Brad Keselowski's Ford Mustang like right there, and then they show the clip and like, hey, there's a huge pack of cars coming off of turn 4. So so those blocks were put, and it really slowed up the Fords and the Toyotas. But at that point, I don't think the Chevys were still going to make it on gas. They ran so many laps hard, and they needed to spend all of those laps from when the caution came out around lap 30-ish to lap 75 or whatever. I'm probably getting these laps really wrong. They needed to save all the gas they needed to, and again, when the Fords and Toyotas pitted, they lost their chance really to save a lot of gas. And then here's where the craziness comes in. You had the first big one of the clash, which actually only took out, I think, 3 drivers. But you had, and I'm going to refer to my replay on this here, but you had Joey Logano, who went up to block Kyle Busch. Kyle Busch had such a run from Denny Hamlin, and Joey Logano makes a block, and then the wreck happened. Kyle Busch, I think he was looking to make a move on Joey Logano. I personally don't think Logano came down on him, but I think Kyle Busch kind of took the air off of the 22 spoiler, and that's what caused them to wreck. It was a pretty big lick from the 18, and the 2 as well. But yeah, you had guys, when they came out, the infield care center, you got Brad Keselowski that was very open about that incident. And Kyle Busch, you can tell he was just kind of pissed off. Joey Logano didn't really know what to do. I mean, blocking is a part of super speedway racing, whether you like it or not. There's nothing that NASCAR can do to stop that. I mean, they've had rules in the Xfinity and Truck Series where you can't lock bumpers, bump drafting, but there's no rule against blocking. There is a common racing etiquette rule for blocking, and that's really you're only allowed one move, and then once you made that move, you can't make another move back to block the guy. Looking from this replay, I mean, Joey Logano was in the middle of the backstretch as they entered turn 3, and Kyle Busch and Denny Hamlin had such a run going into turn 3 as well. Now, I think it looks like Kyle Busch did move down the track, and then he moved up, and Logano also moved up to block him as well. That's like on a fine line between whether or not he actually made 2 moves there or not. It looked like, again, Kyle Busch maybe looked down, and then he's like, oh no, I'm actually going to go back up. Either way, though, what caused the wreck, however, was not a result of blocking, and it was just a result of being in the wrong place in the wrong time. And Kyle Busch just kind of moves down the track, and he looks to try to get past Joey Logano, and he takes the air off of Joey Logano's rear spoiler, which I think sent him around, and that's what resulted in the wreck. I think if Kyle Busch had just stayed in line behind Joey Logano, that would have been perfectly fine, but it was just that slight move to the left side of Joey Logano's rear quarter panel. That's what got him loose. But in the end, it wasn't the biggest wreck of the day. I don't know if you want to call the restart wreck as really being the big one. I mean, cars were heavily damaged. Like, I think the 19 smacked the wall pretty well. Some other guys hit each other pretty badly. But I don't know. Accidents happen. You can't really say much about this wreck. Some people, the most you can do is just kind of laugh at it. And a lot of drivers laughed at it too. I know William Byron kind of joked about it. It did make him look dumb and stupid at the end of the day. But this was also the first time that these guys have come to Daytona 500 weekend with a full, 700 horsepower package. The previous Daytona 500 weekend was the 500, 550, whatever horsepower package. Yeah, they ran that 700 horsepower package in the July race at Daytona, but not the earlier Daytona race. And I think conditions were just right. This is also in the daytime too. The track's a little bit more slick. They just spun the tires, whatever. Don't have to talk about it. I thought it was pretty funny. And, you know, for an exhibition race, who cares? At least it was some entertainment at the end of the day. Here's where I actually have a gripe about this race, and that is safety. And I know David Reagan mentioned this in his Twitter as well, and Brad Keselowski made the same comment too. It's about safety, and a lot of us kind of regret at the end of the day that, you know, the safety improvements that NASCAR has implemented over the years and how safe it has gotten. And it's the same for any motorsports out there. But this is where I lost respect. And back in that Joey Logano, Kyle Busch, and Brad Keselowski incident, I think it was Joey Logano that cut across the track and ran into Denny Hamlin's right rear. Now, it wasn't enough to spin him out, but it was enough to rub on his right rear tire and quarter panel. And looking at the replay, he had significant damage. I mean, before they were coming to the restart, they kept showing slow motion replays, and I'm like, wow, Denny Hamlin got hit hard. So I'm like, he's gonna, you know, have to make a pit stop. And as an Almirola fan, I can't really brag too much about that. Not a fanboy, just passionate. Anyways, I was hoping that Denny Hamlin would pit, but he didn't. He stayed out on it, and in the interaction between him and his crew chief, they were making jokes about going to the infield care center and things like that. And, you know, they get back going green after the failed restart that last time, and everything's looking good. Denny Hamlin's getting shot by Chase Elliott super hard down the backstretch, and sure enough, going into turn 3, loses the right rear. And the big one, the big wreck of the race happened right then and there. And as soon as it happened, I was just like, great, this is going to end badly for someone. And I knew immediately that this whole field was taken out as soon as Clint Bowyer had gone down the track. I mean, the last person that really cleanly went through that screen or that camera shot was Chase Elliott. And Clint Bowyer comes right across Jimmie Johnson's nose, and Joey Logano smacks Jimmie Johnson, and then you got a bunch of cars that pile in, and then you see Jimmie Johnson, you see his front right is just destroyed. It almost looks like Dale Sr.'s 3 car, just how heavy the damage was on the front end. And yeah, at the time it only seemed like Chase Elliott really got through cleanly. But yeah, just guys taken out in this wreck. As I said, Denny Hamlin wrecked. He took out Eric Almirola, Clint Bowyer, Ryan Blaney, Joey Logano. But it was that wide shot, and I talk about Jimmie Johnson here really quickly, and his wreck. When Joey Logano hit him, Joey Logano hit Jimmie Johnson on the door, but his rear quarter panel came back, swung, and hit Jimmie Johnson's quarter panel, and that just shot Jimmie Johnson up into the wall so hard. And this is again why I just kind of lost respect for the whole 11 team. I know it's an exhibition race, I get that, but also at the end of the day, there's some safety concern too. I mean, it's not a full 40 car field, okay? It was an 18 car field, and then after the last track, you minus 2 drivers, so now you had 16. And there were still, like, at that point, it was like 10 to go, maybe less than that, 7 to go, and he could have pitted and worked his way up to the front, and instead decided to stay out on a tire that was definitely going to go down, and then that happened. And boy, if someone got hurt, that would have been a huge embarrassment for NASCAR, and look horrible. Just for an exhibition race that doesn't pay any points. I'm glad, everyone walked out fine, and like I said, the safety has gotten a long ways, but that's at that point, that's where I kind of lost respect for him and the team. I just, you hate to see, you really do hate to see it, but I'm just, I think the clash would have ended better if Denny Hamlin would have pitted. But yeah, either way, it ended like that, and it took out most of the field, and Yeah, from there the race just kind of ended for me. I was like, there's no way. There's no way we just wrecked so many cars. And I do have to kind of go back again with like what Dave Moody said, and people complaining about just an exhibition race, and it is what it is. It's the result of super speedway racing. But I think really my only concern was, again, safety, and it was at that point I just kind of lost respect for the 11 team, because it doesn't matter if it's a exhibition race or it's a point-paying race. At the end of the day, safety does matter, and I wish the team went a little bit more safe than sorry in that incident. The rest of the race was just kind of funny. It looked like a online multiplayer race on like NASCAR Heat 4 with like, I don't know, 7 guys in a lobby. That's pretty much what it was. After that, there was then the Chase Elliott, Kyle Larson, and Eric Jones crash. And that was just kind of a bad case, really, of blocking, or maybe bump drafting gone wrong. Chase Elliott just kind of made his move at the wrong time. If he wasn't locked bumpers with the 42, they would have been fine. But it takes them out. It takes Eric Jones out, which we'll get to next. And the last car left on the field that's completely clean is Austin Dillon. Who would have thought there? But yeah, that wreck was just kind of whatever. At that point, I think these drivers are just, most of the field is gone anyways. What's the point of even being out here? So they're just like, I'm just gonna give it all I can. That's pretty much what they did. So that was hilarious. And what was even more hilarious was this win. I mean, you look at the final few laps. So it started with Austin Dillon leading this thing, and everyone's thinking, I was thinking at the time, Austin Dillon has got this win. There's no way. And then Ryan Newman makes a move on him, and these guys are duking it out in the backstretch. And then here you have on the outside, I mean, Kyle Larson is shoving the absolute heck out of the 20. And then Kyle Larson tries to make a move. Kyle Larson almost did the same thing that Chase Elliott did on him. And I can't believe he didn't turn Eric Jones for that. But Eric Jones is trying so hard to keep it together. He brushes the wall. He's got his hood flapping everywhere. And Ryan Newman makes it back. And then at the start and finish line for the white flag, Denny Hamlin locks on to Eric Jones, his teammate. And just, again, I've been using that term so much. He just plows through the 20 and pushes him up to the lead. And so, yeah, at this point, Ryan Newman is leading this thing. And all you see is a full head of steam by the 20 and the 11, because those guys were able to lock onto bumpers. Here, Austin Dillon almost pulls a Justin Haley and goes under the double yellow. And I think he cuts a tire or something. He gets super tight. And he goes up towards the wall. So that makes 0 clean cars after that. But yeah, just, that was funny. That was good. That was a good piece of entertainment for sure. I personally enjoyed that. I was dying laughing when that was happening. I couldn't believe it. I told my dad about that at the dinner table, and he watched it after dinner, and he was the same too. It was absolutely hilarious. It was good. The ending at least made up for, if people were really upset about that race, the ending made up for it all in the end. But yeah, what a race. It was pretty crazy. Again, it was just an exhibition race. There's nothing really to complain about, and I mean, all in all, I think at the end of the day, we want to see more drivers finish the race, have a little bit more action at the end, but then people don't want to see single file racing at the beginning. And I don't know, that's just what the NASCAR community has become, really. They just want to see action, constant action. And I still think that good racing doesn't need to have action from the beginning to the end. And it's also how you define action too, especially with the strategy that was going on mid-race. That was my action. I love anything that has to do with strategy. I mean, as a Formula One fan, that's pretty much most of their racing too, is just strategy. There's not too much in the way of side-by-side racing. Again, I don't mind that, but sometimes a good race is the strategy calls, really, and what teams decide to do, especially at super speedway racing. That's your best chance to get the most strategy out of the teams, really, and out of the race compared to any other race in the season. So that was definitely fun. But yeah, the only thing I just have to say is, safety. And like I said, just not too happy with why, the 11 team decided to stay out on that tire. I think that Clash race could have ended way better if that wreck didn't happen. They probably would have, more cars at least would have made it to the end of the race. But yeah, again, and just to review, like I've been doing here, the whole blocking situation, it's just the part of super speedway racing. Whether you like it or not, people are going to do that. People are going to do that anywhere in racing too. They're going to block as much as they can. And maybe at the end of the day, maybe a new kind of, etiquette, imaginary book needs to be in place. Back in the day, drivers talked about, having some racing etiquette. Today is just kind of thrown out, and maybe it is time for drivers to, think about racing etiquette again and just race differently, just to help a little bit more with safety and to maybe make the racing quality better. Not too sure about that. The only thing I didn't talk about in this video was about how this Clash race was pretty much a testing race for the 500 for a lot of these drivers. David Land talked a lot about this, and I kind of agree with him on his point, so definitely check out David Land for his thoughts about the race length, as well as using this race as a testing race for the 500. Again, I'm taking this lightly. I don't think it's that much to really worry about because there is a difference between the two events. There are less cars in this Clash race than there are in the 500s. It's a little bit different of an environment, and a little bit more is on the line for that race as well. But if you want to hear David Land's opinions, then really check him out, and then you can see where I fit under that category. Otherwise, that is going to be it from me. Thank you guys again for watching. If you enjoyed, be sure to hit this like button and subscribe for more race reviews, I guess. I'm trying to do this more because this is the career field that hopefully someday I can do and do a lot of. So again, if you enjoyed, feel free to support me. Comment down below what you thought about the Clash and what you thought about Daytona 500 qualifying. I'm pretty open since this channel isn't big, so be sure to comment down anything you'd like, and you'll hear my honest opinion about that subject matter. But coming up this week, we do have the Daytona duels on Thursday night. I will definitely do a short video on that, just discussing anything that happens in the duels, because anything can happen. There can be wrecks, there could be some good racing, there could be conservative racing, strategy, you never know, it's the duels. So we will see how those play out. You guys will see an episode on that. I'm not going to cover too much about the trucks and the Xfinity series or any other series that goes on, but you guys will get my Daytona 500 reactions next week as well. So that has been it from me. Thank you guys again for watching. I'll see you guys next time.